Have you ever felt it? That invisible shift in the room when someone chooses not to speak. They don't lash out, they don't plead, they don't explain, they just vanish. And suddenly, everyone feels it. The silence grows heavy, the absence becomes louder than any scream could ever be. And the ones who took them for granted, they start to panic. Because when someone stops being available, when their energy, their presence, their attention is no longer on tap, everything changes. Now what if that someone was you? What if you stopped giving immediate answers? What if you paused instead of pleasing? What if you chose to hold your peace instead of proving your point? That's where the shift begins. You see, people don't control you through force. They control you through expectation. They've learned your rhythm. They know your soft spots. They bank on your reaction. But the day you stop showing up on cue, the game breaks. And suddenly the people who swore they knew you realize they only knew the version you performed for their comfort. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." But what if, instead of being irritated, you just stopped engaging? Because here's the truth. When you become emotionally unavailable, those who depended on your reactions, they'll start poking harder, they'll accuse, they'll guilt trip, they'll do anything to bring the old you back. Why? Because your reactions kept them safe, kept their image intact, kept their control unchallenged. But let me ask you this. How many times have you betrayed yourself just to keep someone else comfortable? How many yeses have you handed out when your soul was screaming no? How many smiles have you forced just to avoid the weight of their disappointment? Every time you answer out of fear, every time you explain yourself when you didn't need to, every time you rush to solve what isn't even your mess, you bleed a little, your energy spills, your peace cracks, and what's left? Tired bones, a restless mind, and that sinking emptiness that creeps in at night when you wonder why you're so drained but can't name a single reason. But I'll name it for you. You're too available, too reachable, too responsive. To people who wouldn't cross the street for your silence but expect you to sprint for their chaos, this isn't about becoming cold. This isn't about turning your back on love or people. This is about choosing you. For the first time, without apology. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole, becoming undivided, becoming real. And here's where that journey begins, with silence, with the power to hold your reaction and replace it with presence, with the strength to pull back, not to punish but to protect. You were taught to be good, to say yes, to be there, to be nice, to be soft, but no one ever taught you the cost. Because this constant availability, it's not compassion, it's self-erasure. It's a mask called helpful that hides the face of exhaustion. It's a habit of being everyone's medicine while slowly becoming your own poison. And the world? The world rewards the predictable. It loves the reliable fix. It loves knowing you'll say yes, but predictability is the enemy of power. Because when people know you'll pick up, even when you're falling apart, you stop being a person and start becoming a resource. They don't see you. They see what you give. They call you kind, but only when your kindness is useful. They call you strong, but only when your strength serves their weakness. And you keep showing up, hoping one day someone will do the same for you. But that day rarely comes. Because when you teach people that you're always there, they stop asking if you should be. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And for you, that mask might be the giver, the good one, the strong one. But underneath, there's a soul that's tired of being needed and starving to be seen. So now, you're standing at the edge. You can keep giving until there's nothing left. Or you can start keeping a little something for yourself. You can start becoming unavailable, not as punishment, but as protection. Not to withdraw from love, but to rediscover what love looks like when it includes you. Because here's the paradox. The more available you are, the less you're valued. Scarcity builds respect, presence builds power, mystery builds magnetism. And when you finally stop explaining, reacting, performing, the people who remain, they're not there for your role, they're there for your truth. So take the first breath. Don't answer right away. Let the message sit. Let the tension build. Let people wonder where you went. Because sometimes the best way to be heard, is to disappear long enough to make them listen. And sometimes the loudest no is your silence. But we're not done here, because in the next part, we're going deeper, into the why behind your constant reactions, into the secret energy system Carl Jung warned us never to ignore and how it's being drained every single time you say yes to what's breaking you. Stick with me. This next part could save your peace and your life. But now let's ask the deeper question. Why do you give so much of yourself away? Why do you say yes when your bones scream no? Why do you feel like you owe a response, an explanation, a smile, even when you're tired, even when it burns? There's a reason, and it's not weakness. It's because no one ever taught you how to protect your energy. No one ever told you that your attention is a currency, that your presence is a gift, that your silence is power. Instead, they praised you for being nice, for being agreeable, for being quick to help, quick to answer, quick to make others comfortable, even if it meant abandoning yourself. But here's the truth they don't teach. Every time you react out of guilt, every time you explain yourself to people who don't deserve the truth, every time you show up for those who vanish when you need them, you pay in energy, and energy is the one currency you never get back. Carl Jung didn't see the mind as just thoughts and feelings. He saw it as a living energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action drains or builds you. So let me ask you something honest. Are you building yourself? Or are you running on empty, bleeding psychic energy into relationships that feed on your exhaustion? Because the people who drain you, they're not always obvious. Sometimes they're the ones who smile when you cancel your own needs. Sometimes they're the ones who say you've changed when you finally protect your peace. And sometimes it's you. You keeping old habits alive. You choosing comfort over boundaries. You chasing peace through people instead of silence. Jung warned us, what you resist persists. The more you react to disrespect, the more it owns you. The more you try to prove your worth to someone who's already made up their mind, the more invisible you become. And here's what no one tells you. It's not about being strong. It's about being strategic with your soul. You can't save your energy for what matters if you're constantly spending it on what doesn't. You ever wonder why some people walk into a room and instantly command respect, while others explain themselves into exhaustion? It's not words, it's energy. The first person knows how to conserve theirs. The second leaks it through every nervous laugh, every over-explanation, every need to be understood. One becomes magnetic, the other becomes invisible. And the world doesn't respect invisible. So if you feel tired all the time, if your body is heavy, if your mind is loud, maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because you've spent the last decade being emotionally overdrafted. And now your soul is saying, enough. It's time to audit your energy, to track every place you pour yourself and ask, what am I really getting back? Because if your peace is always the price, it's not worth the purchase. Jung believed that wholeness wasn't about adding more love, more friends, more success. It was about reclaiming what was lost, and you've lost enough. Now it's time to recover the self that got buried under all your people-pleasing, the version of you that existed before you learnt to smile through your own erasure. Start by noticing the leaks, that one message you respond to, even when you're tired, that one person who always needs you but never asks how you're doing, that one situation you keep explaining yourself in, hoping they'll finally see you. These aren't small, they're the exact places your power escapes. And this isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming conscious. It's not about cutting everyone off, it's about cutting the strings they use to pull you out of yourself. You think silence is weak. Try holding your tongue when your pride is poked. Try sitting in discomfort without rushing to fix it. Try choosing peace over proving your point. That's not weakness, that's self-mastery. That's the kind of power you can't fake. But to have it, you must stop spending energy like it's infinite. You must stop mistaking urgency for importance, because the world is full of noise, and if you don't choose what matters, the noise will choose for you. So here's your next step. For one day, don't react. Let the text sit unread. Let the tension breathe. Let people wonder where you went. Let the silence do what your words never could. Reveal the truth. You'll learn more in 1 hour of withheld reaction than in 10 years of being emotionally available to people who never earned it. Your energy is sacred. It builds empires, it shapes futures, and it deserves protection. In the next part, we'll step into the dark, into the realm of projection, guilt, and the silent games people play to keep you reacting. Because the moment you stop feeding the game, the entire game falls apart. And that's when your power truly begins, if you're still with me. If this message hits home, drop a comment below that says, "I reclaim my energy." Let's see how many of us are finally done being drained. Let's see who's ready to become untouchable, not by force, but by self-respect. Now let's talk about guilt, that quiet voice in the back of your head that whispers, "You're being selfish. You're abandoning them. You owe them your time, your attention, your explanation." But tell me something real. Why does it feel wrong to protect your peace? Why does choosing yourself feel like betrayal? Why do you second-guess silence, even when your soul is begging for it? Because somewhere along the way, you were trained to believe that your worth lives in your availability, that being needed is the same as being loved, that if you don't show up for everyone, they'll stop showing up for you. Carl Jung would call this a complex, a tangle of past experiences, emotions, and beliefs, living inside you like an invisible script. And the script says, be good, be there, be soft, or they'll leave. So what do? You over-explain, you apologize for taking space, you soften your no into a maybe, then into a yes, even though everything inside you screamed no from the start. You think this is love, but it's survival. It's the child in you, the one who learned early that silence makes people uncomfortable, that boundaries push people away. So you chose connection over self-respect. You traded authenticity for belonging. But the cost? You lost yourself. And now, here you are, emotionally overdrafted, constantly reacting and quietly resenting everyone who takes more than they give. But here's the truth Jung knew. The guilt isn't yours. It's a ghost. A leftover emotion from a version of you that didn't know how to stay whole while loving others. Because real love, true connection, doesn't require your exhaustion. It doesn't demand your reaction. It doesn't guilt you into showing up half dead just to keep the peace. You don't need to earn your place by bleeding for people who wouldn't even notice your absence if you stopped texting first. Let that sink in. Guilt is not proof you've done something wrong. Guilt is proof that you're outgrowing a role you were never meant to play forever. So now, you're at a crossroads. You can keep performing, the helpful one, the available one, the one who answers right away. Or you can pause, you can breathe. You can let the discomfort rise without trying to fix it. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. You start to hear your real voice. Not the programmed one, not the pleasing one, not the one shaped by guilt or fear, but the voice beneath it all, the one that says, "No, I'm not available right now. No, I don't owe you my time. No, I don't have to explain why my silence is sacred." And when you say that, even just once, you begin to rewire everything. Because here's the paradox. The more you betray yourself to avoid guilt, the more guilt you carry. But the moment you choose self-respect over appeasement, the guilt starts to dissolve. Not because it disappears, but because you finally understand it. Jung believed guilt was a signal, not a sentence. It points to a boundary being crossed, usually by you, against yourself. So next time that guilt rises when you choose peace over performance, don't silence it. Study it. Ask, whose voice is this? Is it yours? Or is it your mother's disappointment? Your father's rules? Your ex's expectations? That teacher who said you had to be nice or no one would like you? Because when you trace guilt back to its source, you realize it's rarely rooted in truth. It's rooted in training. You were trained to people please. You were trained to avoid conflict. You were trained to keep the peace, even if it meant breaking yourself. But training isn't destiny. You can unlearn it. You can rewire it. You can choose a different path. One where your energy is sacred, your time is gold, and your peace is protected like a temple. And here's what happens when you start walking that path. Some people get louder, some guilt gets heavier, some silence gets longer, but that's just turbulence, not a sign you're wrong, a sign you're ascending. Because the people who only loved your compliance won't know what to do with your clarity. They'll say you're selfish, they'll say you've changed, they'll say you're cold, Let them call you every name they need to while you call your power back home. Because Jung said it best, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the version others feel comfortable with. Not the one who fits every need but your own. The real one. The whole one. The one who no longer reacts to every pull on their energy like a puppet on strings. So here's your next step. Next time guilt whispers, you owe them. Say back, I owe myself first. And watch how everything begins to shift. You'll lose some people, but you'll find something far more valuable. Your center. In the next section, we're going deeper into projection, the silent manipulations, and the subconscious battles that keep you reactive. Because when you see clearly, you don't need to respond. You just need to stand still. If this is shifting something inside you, comment, guilt isn't my guide anymore. And let's keep going. This journey isn't over. Your power hasn't even begun to speak yet. Now let's talk about projection, the quiet game the mind plays when it doesn't want to face itself. You think you're angry at them. You think they hurt you. You think they're the problem. But what if they're just the mirror? Not the cause, but the reflection. Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And that's the wound, isn't it? You don't react because they said something wrong. You react because something inside you moved, something old, something raw, something unfinished. You weren't triggered by them. You were triggered by the part of you they touched. That's projection. It's when your shadow grabs the wheel and says, let's make this about them. Because looking inside is too much. And so you lash out, you ghost, you chase, you defend. But deep down, it's not about them. It's about what they awaken in you. Maybe they remind you of the parent who never saw you. Maybe their silence echoes a love that abandoned you. Maybe their confidence touches your buried shame. So you project. You turn them into the villain, or the savior, or the answer to every unmet need you've never spoken out loud. And here's the danger. When you don't see your projection, you give them power they never asked for. You chase apologies they can't give. You build stories that aren't true. You stay in relationships just to rewrite your past. But the past doesn't heal through repetition. It heals through awareness. And Jung said this with fire. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So how do you break the cycle? You pause, you stop asking, why are they like this? And you start asking, why does this feel familiar? That tone, that distance, that rejection, where have you felt it before? Because I promise you, the person in front of you isn't new. They're just echoing someone you met long ago. And if you don't face that echo, you'll keep reacting like a child in an adult body, fighting ghosts instead of healing wounds. This is what Jung meant when he said, we don't just fall in love with people, we fall in love with our projections. We don't see them clearly. We see our unmet tenderness, we see our longing, we see the parts of ourselves we can't access, so we chase it in someone else. And that's why lust, obsession, even hate, they all carry heat. Because they're not about that person. They're about the part of you that got stirred awake. So here's the truth no one teaches you. Not every emotion deserves a response. Some just deserve to be felt, to be studied, to be listened to, without action. Because when you act from projection, you act from distortion. You punish people who didn't wound you. You beg people who can't love you. You run from people who saw you too clearly. And most of all, you run from yourself. But here's what changes when you see it. The projection loses its grip. You stop needing to be right. You stop chasing validation. You stop fighting for things that never fit. And in the silence that follows, you meet yourself. Not the version shaped by others. Not the mask worn to survive. But the real you. Raw, unfiltered, whole. Jung believed that healing wasn't about fixing the ego. It was about making peace with the shadow. Because when you see what you project, you take your power back. You don't need them to change. You need to stop confusing your past with your present. You need to stop turning strangers into saviors and triggers into truths. Because a trigger isn't a verdict, it's an invitation. An open door that says, come see what you've been carrying. So next time someone sets you off, before you speak, pause. Before you act, breathe. Ask yourself, what is this really about? And don't answer right away. Let the question burn a little. Let it melt through the reflexes. Let it speak from the body, not the ego. Because when the truth comes, it won't need defense. It won't need revenge. It will just feel like peace. And that peace, that still unshakable clarity, that's what freedom feels like. Not getting them back, not proving them wrong, not controlling the situation, just knowing that you no longer need the performance, that you've outgrown the story. You don't need to fix anyone. You don't need to beg anyone. You don't need to explain why your silence speaks louder now. Because when you stop projecting, you stop bleeding into conversations that were never about you. You stop reenacting childhood on every first date. You stop confusing adrenaline for love. And most importantly, you stop reacting. You start observing. You start choosing. You start living from the inside out. So comment below, I take my projections back, because every time you do, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And in the next section, we're going to talk about energy, how emotional vampires, leaky boundaries, and unprocessed wounds drain you, and how to rebuild the power you've forgotten you have. This isn't just healing, it's homecoming, and you're almost there. Let's keep going. Now we arrive at the part no one prepares you for, the part where the world doesn't change, but you do, where the same triggers still exist, but they no longer own you, where silence no longer feels like rejection, but restoration, where lust loses its grip, projection fades, and anger dissolves into insight. But here's the twist, that peace, it doesn't feel triumphant at first, it feels empty. Because when you stop chasing, there's nothing left to distract you from the quiet inside. That's the final test. Not whether you can conquer your emotions, but whether you can stay with them when there's nothing left to fight, chase, or fix. Carl Jung called this individuation, the sacred unraveling of everything false until only the essential you remains. And this is where you learn. You were never addicted to pleasure. You were addicted to escape. You weren't craving people. You were craving permission to feel. You weren't seeking love. You were seeking wholeness. And here's the deepest truth. Wholeness doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from owning your imperfection without shame, from being able to say, I still get triggered, I still feel lust, I still want to run sometimes, but now I know why. That's power, not the loud kind, not dominance, not performance, the quiet kind, the kind that lets you walk away without slamming the door, the kind that lets you cry without judging your tears, the kind that lets you sit in a room alone and not feel lonely anymore. Because the presence you used to crave from others, you now give to yourself. And that's what Jung meant when he wrote, who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakens. You have awakened, not because you read a book, not because you listen to this video, but because somewhere in your bones, you finally felt the truth. This life was never about fixing what's broken. It was about remembering what was buried. The parts of you that felt too soft for this world, the parts that were laughed at, dismissed, told they were too much or not enough. But now you understand. Your cravings were the map, your triggers were the compass, your breakdowns were the doorway. And now you walk through, no longer afraid of being alone, no longer addicted to the next hit of validation, no longer mistaking attention for affection or desire for devotion, because now you belong to you. Your nervous system breathes easier, your mind grows quieter, your heart becomes a place you can finally rest in. And from that place, love looks different, not a rescue, not a possession, not a fantasy, but a meeting of two people who've already met themselves, of two souls who've already come home. And even if that person hasn't arrived yet, you're not waiting anymore. You're building, you're healing, creating, holding space. You're learning to sit with the ache without making it someone else's job to soothe it. You're learning that healing isn't the absence of desire, it's the transformation of it. From compulsion into creativity, from fear into freedom, from escape into embodiment. Because when your soul is full, you no longer grasp. You offer, not your trauma, not your chaos, not your emptiness, but your wholeness. And that is when love becomes real. Not as a fire you chase, but as a flame you carry. So if this journey touched something in you, like, subscribe, Drop a comment that says, I choose presence over performance. Because this is more than a video, it's a ritual, it's a remembering. That you were never broken, you were just disconnected from the parts of you the world taught you to abandon. But you've come back, and from here on out, you don't chase pleasure, you follow meaning. You don't numb pain, you listen to it. You don't silence your soul, you let it speak. Through your art, your stillness, your breath. Because the next time the craving comes, you won't run. You'll say, welcome back, what do you want me to feel? And in that moment, you won't just avoid the spiral, you'll rewrite the story. You'll stop being the actor in someone else's script and become the author of your own. That is the promise of presence. That is the legacy of healing. And that is the revolution of remembering who you are. Welcome home.